The body of 32-year-old Elena Rosario, a citizen of the Philippines, was found on a paved area at the foot of an elite skyscraper in the business district of Doha. The official version, announced by the local police, was suicide due to depression. However, the materials she managed to pass on a few hours before her death pointed to a cold-blooded murder, which was the culmination of her attempt to expose an international child trafficking network organized by her employer, a Qatari billionaire. The case did not receive widespread coverage in the world press, and key details were hidden behind statements about a tragic accident. For Elena Rosario, an experienced nanny with 12 years of experience, the job offer in Qatar seemed like winning the lottery. At 32, she had worked for wealthy families in Hong Kong and Singapore, earning an impeccable reputation. She was known for her patience, professionalism, and genuine love for children. The money she sent home to Manila went to support her elderly parents and pay for her younger brother's university education. The offer, which came from a prestigious recruitment agency, promised a monthly salary of $2,500, 3 times her previous income. The employer was Saeed Al-Hamad, a Qatari billionaire whose fortune was built on construction and investments. Elena was to take care of his 2 children, a 5-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. After a short video interview with Saeed's wife, Amira, who struck Elena as a polite and educated woman, the contract was signed. 2 weeks later, Elena flew to Doha, looking forward to what she considered her dream job. At the airport, she was met by a silent driver in a snow-white dishdasha, who escorted her to a luxury sedan. The drive along the brightly lit avenues of Doha ended at the foot of one of the tallest towers in the West Bay area. The luxurious penthouse, which occupied the entire 40th floor, was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling panoramic windows offered a view of the Persian Gulf. Polished marble floors reflected the light from designer lamps, and minimalist furniture emphasized the vast space. It was a world of wealth that Elena had previously only seen in magazines. The children, 5-year-old Leo and 3-year-old Nina, were charming, but their behavior immediately caused Elena a vague uneasiness. They were unusually quiet and obedient for their age, hardly playing or making any noise. Their eyes showed a wariness that was unusual for children surrounded by love and care. The first few weeks were spent trying to establish contact. Elena quickly noticed some strange inconsistencies. The children did not resemble either Saeed, a man with distinctive Arab features, or his wife, Amira. The boy, Leo, had light blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, which made him look like he was from Northern Europe. The girl, Nina, had dark skin and delicate features characteristic of East Africans. One evening, when Amira returned from shopping, Elena plucked up the courage to ask the question that had been tormenting her for so long. She delicately inquired whether the children were adopted. Amira's face instantly became cold and impenetrable. "Yes, they are adopted children," she snapped, without looking at Elena. "Their parents died in a car accident. We will not return to this subject." The tone was such that Elena understood. This was not a request, but an order. Her suspicions only grew when she discovered that the children did not know a word of Arabic, which was the family's native language. They didn't talk to each other, and when Elena tried to speak to them in simple English, they responded in monosyllables, with a noticeable accent that she identified as Eastern European. They seemed to exist in their own isolated world, full of unspoken fear. Elena saw them flinch at loud noises or sudden movements, instinctively cowering when Saeed entered the room. He rarely paid any attention to them, spending most of his time in his office or at business meetings, but his presence seemed to paralyze the children. These observations painted a disturbing picture that had nothing to do with the story of tragically deceased parents and a happy adoption. Elena felt that behind the facade of luxury and respectability lay a dark secret, and these frightened children were at its very center. The turning point came late one night, almost a month after Elena's arrival. Awoken by quiet, stifled sobbing, she got up and walked down the hall to the children's bedroom. Little Nina was curled up in her bed, crying. Elena sat down next to her and gently hugged the girl. She was used to children's nighttime fears, but this crying was different. It sounded like deep, conscious grief. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Elena asked quietly, stroking the girl's back. Nina pressed herself against her and whispered in her broken English, "I want my mommy." Elena's heart sank. She continued to stroke her soothingly, searching for the right words. "I know, sweetheart. I know. Do you remember your mommy?" The girl was silent for a moment, then uttered a phrase that turned Elena's vague suspicions into chilling certainty. "I don't know. Uncle said Mom sold me." Elena's world turned upside down. The words of a 3-year-old child, spoken with unchildlike resignation to fate, were more terrifying than any scream. It didn't sound like a fantasy or a childish whim. It was knowledge that had been put into the little girl's head to break her will. From that night on, Elena realized that she could no longer be just a nanny. She became the only person in this huge, cold penthouse who saw Leo and Nina not as property, but as unhappy, stolen children. She was aware of the danger of her situation. She was a powerless foreign worker in a foreign country, opposing a man with unlimited power and money. Going to the local police would not only be useless, but also deadly dangerous. No one would believe her, and Saeed would easily portray her as crazy or a blackmailer. The only way out was to find irrefutable evidence. Elena began her secret investigation, acting with extreme caution. She knew that Saeed's office was off limits. Even the cleaning staff were not allowed to enter without his personal presence. She began to observe his daily routine, memorizing when he left and for how long. The opportunity presented itself a week later. Said and Amira left for an evening event, a charity gala dinner that was the talk of Doha's social scene. Elena put the children to bed and waited until the penthouse was quiet. She knew that security was stationed at the main entrance and the elevators, but inside the apartment, the movements of the staff were not so strictly controlled. Approaching the office door, she found that, as expected, it was locked with an electronic lock. But a week of observation had not been in vain. She had seen Saeed several times, having forgotten his keycard, open the door by placing his finger on a small scanner, and then entering a code on a barely visible panel. However, once she noticed him hurriedly taking a regular metal key from a vase in the hallway. She took a chance and checked. The key was there, hidden among the artificial flowers. With her heart in her mouth, she inserted it into the keyhole. The click of the lock sounded deafeningly loud in the silence. Inside the office, it smelled of expensive wood and tobacco. Elena did not turn on the overhead light, using only the flashlight on her phone. She quickly examined the polished rosewood desk. On it lay only papers related to Saeed's legal business. She began to methodically check the desk drawers. The top 2 were unlocked and contained only office supplies. The bottom one was locked. Looking through the bunch of keys that Saeed left on the dresser in the hallway, she found a small key that fit the lock perfectly. Inside the drawer was a thin, dark leather folder with no markings. Elena opened it, and her hands trembled. Inside were not business documents. The first thing she saw were photographs of children. About 15 color passport-size photos attached to sheets of printed text. Children of different ages and nationalities. Several blonde, like Leo, several dark-skinned, like Nina, and some Asian faces. Under each photo was a name, age, and amount in US dollars, from $30,000 to $80,000. Next to them were the contact details of people marked as suppliers, with phone numbers and email addresses in Ukraine, Moldova, and Ethiopia. It was a catalog of living children. Scrolling further, she found printouts of WhatsApp messages. The dialogues were in English between Saeed and other subscribers listed under names like Khalid Dubai. or Fahad Riyad. The messages were short and businesslike. Need a boy, age 4 to 5, European appearance. Can you guarantee he's healthy? There's a new batch. 3 girls, ages 4 to 6, fair-skinned. Price negotiable. The client is satisfied and asks if it's possible to find a sister for his previous purchase. Elena felt sick. Said was not just a buyer. He was the center, the dealer in a monstrous network selling children to wealthy and childless couples in the Persian Gulf, who, for one reason or another, could not or did not want to go through the official adoption process. She realized that Leo and Nina were just 2 of many, goods purchased and delivered to order. Overcoming a wave of nausea and panic, Elena began to act. Methodically, page by page, she photographed the entire contents of the folder on her phone. Photos of children, price lists, contacts of suppliers, correspondence. Then she sent all the files to her best friend in Manila, accompanying them with a short message. If anything happens to me, pass this on to the police and the international media. Don't ask any questions, and don't answer any. She knew she was sending her friend into a minefield, but there was no other way out. Returning the folder and keys to their place, she left the office, locking the door behind her. But simply exposing Saeed was not enough. She couldn't leave Leo and Nina in this hell. That same night, overcome with despair, she made one last, reckless attempt. She quietly woke the children, dressed them, and tried to lead them out through the service exit, hoping to take the freight elevator down and leave the building unnoticed. But her plan failed. She was stopped at the elevator by a security guard. He was polite, but adamant. "Madam," he said calmly, "you are not allowed to leave the apartment with the children without Mr. Al-Hamad's direct instruction." All her pleas and explanations that the children needed fresh air were met with his imperturbability. The path to salvation was cut off. She found herself trapped on the 40th floor with evidence that could cost her her life. Elena did not know that her every move in the office and her subsequent attempt to escape had been recorded. Said Al-Hamad, being a cautious and suspicious man, had installed a hidden video surveillance system in the penthouse that covered all the rooms, including his private office. While sitting at a charity dinner, he received a notification on his phone about movement in the office. Turning on the broadcast, he watched in real time as his children's nanny picked the locks, photographed secret documents, and sent them from her phone. His face did not flinch, and he watched the performance to the end, including the failed attempt to escape with the children. Silently putting away his phone, he apologized to his companions, citing urgent business, and left the event with Amira. The drive home was completely silent. When they entered the penthouse, Elena was just putting the awakened children back to bed. Said calmly walked into his office, leaving the door open, and gestured to the nanny to come in. "Elena, please come in." His voice was even, almost friendly. When she entered, he pointed to the chair opposite the table. He was holding her phone in his hands. "You saw something you shouldn't have seen," he said without preamble, scrolling through the gallery of photos of documents. "This creates a problem for both of us." Elena froze. She was overcome with animal fear, but the sight of his calm face made her feel a surge of rage. She remained silent, looking him straight in the eye. He put down the phone and clasped his fingers together. "But every problem has a solution. I'm willing to offer you $100,000. Cash. Right now. You fly out on the next flight, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and forget everything you saw here. Forget about these children, about me, about this house. It's a very generous offer, Elena. It will allow you and your family to live comfortably for the rest of your lives." At that moment, Elena's despair turned to contempt. She looked at this man in an expensive suit who talked about buying her silence as casually as he discussed buying children. She slowly rose from her chair and spat in his face. "You're a monster," she shouted. "These children are someone's sons and daughters." Said's face contorted with anger. He silently wiped his face with a silk handkerchief. At that moment, two of his bodyguards, who had been standing inconspicuously behind the door, entered the office. "It seems we have not reached an agreement," he said coldly. Elena rushed to the exit, but the guards, tall and muscular, easily intercepted her. She struggled desperately, but her arms were held in an iron grip. They dragged her across the living room to the panoramic windows leading to the spacious balcony. Said followed behind. Stepping out into the piercing night wind, he pulled her phone out of her pocket. "Have you sent the photos yet?" "To whom?" he asked, looking her in the eyes. Elena was silent, breathing heavily. Her gaze was fixed on the glass door leading to the living room. There, their faces pressed against the cold glass, stood Leo and Nina. Their eyes were filled with horror. They watched silently as the two men held their nanny. Said, not waiting for an answer, nodded to the guards. They lifted her effortlessly and carried her over the high glass railing of the balcony. For a brief moment, she hung in the air, held by strong arms. The last thing she saw were the frightened faces of the two children frozen behind the window. Then the arms loosened their grip. The fall from the 40th floor took just over 4 seconds. The official conclusion of the Qatari police was brief and left no room for interpretation. Suicide committed in a state of deep depression caused by homesickness and financial problems. The case was closed in record time. But Elena's friend in Manila, upon receiving the terrible news of her death, carried out her last wish. She sent the photos and a copy of the correspondence to all the major Philippine news agencies and also sent a complete package of documents to Interpol headquarters. A quiet international scandal erupted. Under pressure from human rights organizations and the Philippine government, the Qatari authorities were forced to launch an investigation. Saida al-Hamad was arrested but held in custody for only 3 months. He was released due to lack of evidence. Key witnesses from among his servants and security guards either refused to testify or claimed they had seen nothing. The folder with the documents that Elena had photographed disappeared from the office. Shortly after his release, Said sold his property in Qatar and moved to Saudi Arabia, where he disappeared without a trace. Of the 15 children whose photos were in the folder, international organizations managed to find and return only 4 to their home countries. The fate of the others, including Leo and Nina, remains unknown. Elena Rosario's family received $200,000 in compensation from the Qatari government as humanitarian aid, with the unspoken condition that they cease all public accusations and contact with the press. The story of Elena, a nanny who gave her life trying to save other people's children, never became public knowledge, remaining just one of many untold tragedies hidden behind the facades of wealth and power.